Before we bring on tonight's guest, I want to put something out there for you. For some time now, since I started airing live stream episodes, I've seen comments put out there where people seemingly think that I've stopped putting out regular episodes of the show. They've made comments about, oh, it's good to see you posting episodes again. Well, I never did stop. Apparently, if you think that, then you're missing all the live stream episodes. Most of the time anymore, I am airing live stream episodes with occasional pre-recorded episodes sprinkled in. So if you think that I stopped airing regular weekly episodes, it just means that you've got a library of live stream episodes that you've been missing. If that's the case, you must be only using YouTube to listen to the show. To find those live stream episodes, just go to the Dogman Encounters YouTube channel, and towards the top there, you'll see different categories of my videos. Well, click on live, and then all the live streams will pop up. That way you can see all the episodes you've been missing. But having said that, let's bring on tonight's guest now. Tonight's guest wishes to remain anonymous, and with that in mind, I'm just going to call her Lynn. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vic.
Well, thanks for being here. Lynn, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I've spent most of my life in Alaska. I've been in the lower 48 for a little bit because I was caring for a very sick family member who just passed away. I lost her 5 months ago.
Well, like I told you before we started this, I'm so sorry to hear about you losing her, but I'm sure she's so proud of you, and don't forget, you're going to see her again. I know it's not easy at all, but you will see her again, so please try to keep that in mind. Considering how you spent most of your life in Alaska, do you see that as being a plus or a drawback?
Plus.
Yeah, Alaska's a beautiful place. I've been there a few times, and it's just amazingly beautiful.
Yeah, it's like no other place on earth. The only place I love more than, or only thing that means, or said individual, means more to me than Alaska was my mom, and that's the only person who could have ever gotten me out of Alaska.
Very unique, so I can understand why you would say that. And speaking of you living there, from what I understand, you worked as a longshoreman while you were there. What was the most frightening close call that you had while doing that kind of work?
Well, almost got hit by a pallet. Let's see, well, what else? We practice a lot of safety. We're pretty safe. I would say more dangerous was when I commercial fish. That was dangerous. But longshoring isn't really dangerous. There's a lot of safety protocols in place compared to, say, commercial fishing. But there's a reason you don't see a lot of old deckhands working on boats, because once you get a certain age, you can't do it. You can't take the long hours. Physically demanding. You don't worry about what's in the water because the water will kill you. And when you put on a survival suit, it's because your boat's going down. And you better pray to God there's another boat close by to save your butt. Because you only last so long in those suits. Our captain used to time us getting into them.
Yeah, those can be some really bad waters. I can only imagine what it must be like to put a suit like that on and have to step off the deck of a boat and into the water, and there's no going back to the boat.
I never had to do it. I was on a very good boat, very well-maintained boat. But if I had to do it, I was prepared to. When I heard about that show that they saw on the, TV, putting somebody in a survival suit and floating them across because they were a deckhand short, I went, oh my God. Why would they do that? You either work a deckhand short and then get that member, after you finish your sets and stuff, or you just drop everything and you get them in the Dutch and out on. immediately. You know what I mean? There's no getting a crew member from another boat in a no less bring water. Yeah. No, we don't do that. Just one example of that shows kind of a fallacy.
Yeah, it sure does look like a totally different way of life. I can only imagine what it must be like to do that kind of work.
That's not realistic, that show. A real working boat wouldn't do the things that they do on that show. I mean, some of it, yeah, but the thing like putting that guy in the survival suit, floating him to another boat, that's laughable.
You mean you can't believe everything you see on TV?
No. Especially when it comes to Alaska.
Yeah, I'd say imagine that. Now, Lynn, you've always impressed me whenever we've spoken as a no-nonsense type of lady. Before you had your first experience with a cryptid, did you believe that they could possibly even be out there?
Well, Harryman, yeah, I could, I'd heard stories. I'd spoken with a lot of Native Alaskan friends and Yupik and Inuit, but nothing quite prepares you for actually seeing them. Because we're taught that they don't exist. And it's purposely being kept quiet by powers that be. I mean, that's obvious.
Oh, no doubt. They definitely don't want you to know about their existence. And I think the biggest reason why it's so hard to wrap your mind around them being out there is because when you do have your first experience, you realize that you've been living a lie. You've been lied to your whole life. You've been told ever since you were small that they aren't out there, that they can't exist.
So you wonder what else you've been lied to about?
Well, yeah, that's only natural. Well, you've got a lot of Dogman experiences to share with us, so let's get down to the meat and potatoes now. When you're telling us about your experiences, please tell us every last detail that you can recall.
First time that I encountered them was going to see, my father he's in an area of East Texas, or was. He owns a ranch there, and he's had it since, I think Dad bought that in the 80s? Late 70s. It was late 70s. When I first kind of heard about them, but I didn't know what I was hearing about, I didn't understand what I was hearing about, I was out in Dutch, I think it was like 97, 96. And my father and I were talking every weekend. And one weekend, he asked me, he goes, "Kid, have you got these big black dogs down here in Texas?" I said, "Well, I'm kind of confused. Dad, are you talking like, are they the neighbor's dogs, or are they like wild feral? I mean, exactly are we talking about here?" He said, "Well, they're not the neighbor's dogs. And they're big, really big." I said, "Well, what do they look like?" So it's like big black wolves. And I said, "Dad, there's no wolves in Texas. To my knowledge, there hasn't been wolves there in probably 100 years. And I said, we're pretty good about guesstimating, weights on cattle, because when we chip in the fall, we kind of write down approximately what each cow weighs, so that we didn't get, ripped off by the stockyards. So we had a pretty good idea of what we should be getting money-wise from each cow. Anyway, he said, so I said, well, based, on that, I said, what's the approximate weight of these dogs? And he says, about the size of a 2-year-old Black Angus bull calf. And I said, that's impossible. We don't have wolves that big in Alaska. Are you sure that maybe distance, the perception that it looked bigger than they actually are? 500 pounds, it's just impossible. And then in the background, my stepmother goes, and they walk around on 2 legs like human beings. I went, whoa. I said, Dad, maybe is the doctor giving Dorothy some new kind of medication or something? Because docs don't walk around on 2 legs like humans. Maybe should have the doctor check her medication. It sounds like she's, maybe hallucinating. I mean, what else would you think, Vic? Honestly, what would you think? And all of a sudden, he just shut up. He didn't say another word. And I thought about it all that week. So next week when we spoke, so it's nothing. Whatever they are, they're gone. They moved on. I haven't seen them. And that was the end of it. Or so I thought. So, years go by. My mother gets sick. I end up staying here to take care of her and protect her and all this other stuff. That's another story in itself. But she said, you should go see your father. So I went and saw my dad. And flew into Dallas, rented a small limo and rode out there. By the way, it's actually cheaper to rent a limousine than it is to take Uber. At least there it is. So I think it was like the 3rd night. We were having a good time. We laughed, joked, talked about the old days, buying and selling cattle and trading horses and just that kind of life is it's a good life for those that can afford to still live it. They're making it harder and harder for people to hang on to their family farms and stuff. So don't know how much longer that's going to last. Everything's going corporation. So that 3rd night. Oh, okay. Let me backtrack. For 3 days, he kept saying, everything has to be inside the fence before dark. And I said, Dad, why do you keep saying that? He goes, do I say that a lot? I said, yeah, 3 or 4 times a day. So why do you say that so much? He said, well, and he didn't lie to me. He said, well, he thought about it for a moment. He said, I either find them dead or I never see them again. Interesting. I'm like, that's strange. I said, so it sounds like you got a coyote problem. Maybe we should clean them out while I'm here, And he just kind of smiled and, yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. And so that 3rd night, we're sitting, and I think I'd had 2 beers. You know how you're talking and you'll be sipping. I mean, the whole night I had 2 beers. Was not drunk. Neither was he. We were talking about the old days, talking about this, talking about that, laughing, having a good time. And I'm one of those people that's constantly surveying my surroundings. I'm always my peripheral. I catch things on my peripheral that most people never catch because they haven't had to be aware. I don't think they've been in situations where they had to be alert like that. So they come. I think what they have is tunnel vision. Well, I'm trying to always keep aware. I noticed these like 20 sets of eyes out in the field. My dad's got like 3 of those big farm lights. I should be able to see these. What came with those sets of eyes, and it was like I even tried to hit him with a flashlight. Couldn't see. It was really weird. It's like it was really black or something. It was a full moon that night too. That was the other thing. I said, Dad. He was sitting down. I said, what's out there? What is that? He gets up when he comes over and he kind of smiles. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't nervous. Completely relaxed. Which after I was analyzing all this in my head, putting this all together. And one thing that struck me is very strange. I met one of his neighbors like the day before, and he told me this story about my father let a $5,000 bull left him die out in the field. I said, that don't sound like the guy I know. My dad would have done anything and everything humanly possible to save one of his cows. I remember as a kid pulling cows out of snowbanks because Dad's business partner put the bull in the herd at the wrong time of the year. We had cows coming in snowbanks. I mean, dropping calves in snowbanks. We all managed to just only lose one. We were very fortunate. Normally you would have lost a lot more, but we were constantly on those horses out there looking. They get back in those pines, and the only way to get back in there is on horseback. That's it. You couldn't even get back in there on a 4-wheeler. So he tells me this story, and I'm like, I said, my dad did that? That don't sound like the guy I know at all. I just couldn't imagine my dad doing something like that. Just left him out there to die. It all made sense later on. So he had contact with these guys since mid late 90s. But he never mentioned her again to me. I suppose he didn't want to be called crazy because that's the first thing I thought. I thought my stepmother was being over-medicated or something. So anyway, he looks, and like I said, totally nonchalant, relaxed. He goes, oh, that's just a young kid down the road. I'm leasing them some grazing land. And I said, yeah, those aren't cattle. I know predator's eyes when I see them. Those are forward-facing eyes. And then he says, oh, probably just coyote. I said, pretty big eyes for coyotes, wouldn't you say? And these are big gold eyes. And I was getting this odd feeling when I was looking at them. I'm pretty fearless. I mean, to me, fear is like a survival tool. But fear to the point of being incapacitated? No. I just won't allow it. I won't allow that. I won't allow myself to go there because that's a dangerous situation. When you're incapacitated and incapable of moving even, you're in a bad situation. That's fear in the extreme. That's like terror. I would put that in actually that category. And I remember saying to Dad, speaking of coyotes, we should go clean them out a little bit. Sounds like you got a problem with them around here. And that part, well, I think Texas has a problem with coyotes these days, but I said, I can't stand them. They're nothing but scavengers. They're nothing like our beautiful, noble Alaskan wolves. And then right after I said that, okay, this grass was about waist high. It came up fast. I mean, I have never seen anything move that fast in my life. About halfway between where it came out of the deep grass and that stock trailer, which is, I'm guessing, around 40 foot, 50 foot, probably 7 foot high. No, it went bipedal halfway there. I marked where when it passed the stock trailer, its head was above the stock trailer. Next day, I went out there and measured that. When that happened, I'm like, what the? And I mean, I was just like, I'm looking at them out there. I'm looking at that. I'm like, what is going on here? Now, I know what I saw. That's I'd say around 500, just like Dad said. Backward facing hawks, like a dog. I've heard of people seeing the ones that have like legs like a human. I've not seen them. I have not seen them. I suspect they're not the same as a dogman. I think there's something else. But I can't say because just from what I've heard, it sounds like they are something entirely different. So it was weird the way, like, it was almost like he was showing me he wasn't a mangy coyote or something. I don't know. It's the impression I got. So I'm looking at them and I'm counting eyes and I'm like thinking, how fast can I get to Dad's gun room? And I went, that's not going to do me any good. There's 20 of them. I just seen what that one could do. And then all of a sudden I felt this wave of fear, terror hit me like I am never felt fear like that in my life. And I screamed in my head, stop now, get out of my head. And then it immediately stopped. And then I felt this overwhelming sense of curiosity. They can mind speak. They can convey feelings too. That's just hard. It's so strange to me. But at the time, it felt completely normal. I don't know if that makes any sense. They said, you're not like other humans. I said, no, I'm not. And I said, what are you? Yeah. Remember, they said that they were old, very old. They'd been here a long time. And I remember at one point I said, you're not going to be safe here. It's going to come time you're going to have to leave this area because the military will probably try to use you. And I heard like a chuckle, like soft laughter. And I said, seriously, I'm serious here, you guys. I said, let me show you my home. And I started showing them like pictures in my mind of Alaska. Endless forests, mountains, rivers, lakes, and no roads anywhere. Like what you'd see flying in a plane. And I said, probably a lot safer here. As you know, you guys seem pretty capable, but when it comes to powers that be, I don't think you're going to be able to hold your own. You'd be better off just to try to stay away. I didn't get the impression that these guys were evil. They're definitely carnivores. And no doubt about that. They're meat eaters. But I've dealt with that all over Alaska. So, I mean, we got bears, we got wolves. I mean, you name it, we got it. But evil, from what I've heard on your show, there definitely are some that are. But I did not get that impression from these guys. I think they like to see if they can scare people, though. They definitely like to see it. I think they find it amusing that most humans become afraid so easily. I think it's a test. In some cases, in other cases, I think they just want the people out of their area. Maybe they have their mates. They're young. I don't know. But those would be good reasons to scare somebody out of your area. You know, rather than harm them. Because so many people get harmed, there's going to start to be a trail. And that trail is going to lead right to their doorstep. So that'd be another reason for them not to actively be going after people. But these guys, like I said, the impression I got said they weren't like out to get humans. But I've heard some really disturbing stories on your show that I think they're a lot like humans in the fact that there's good and there's bad. There's good and bad elements. So, you know, I went and sat back down with Dad, and we started talking about different horses and this and that. Every once in a while I'd get up and I'd look. Still out there. They were listening to our conversation. We finally broke off at 3 o'clock in the morning because we were both pretty tired. But it was a good talk. I mean, we hadn't talked like that in years. So, next night, there was one at my window, or at Dad's, in the room I was staying in my dad's house. I just kind of ignored him. I didn't know what else to do. I was just ignored him. And then I finally just went to sleep. Let's see. So, okay, spent a couple of weeks with my father. Then came back here. Because while I was gone, this neighbor kid was renting. We own our property. These people were like renting from this guy who bought a property next to us. Shoved my mother, knocked her down while I was gone. This kid is about my size. But if I'd have done anything to him, you know where I would end up in jail, right? A 79-year-old woman knocked her down. I was furious. The second night I was back, all of a sudden, I had this big German Shepherd. In fact, she's so big, everybody always thought she was male. My mom used to call her high stepper, like a high stepping horse. Because she was a beautiful German Shepherd. So all of a sudden I hear Amber at my door, like, you know how like dogs are scared and, you know, they whine and they get frantic, and that's what she was doing. And I've never heard this dog do that before. So I open the door, she comes in like really fast and then curls up in a ball in the middle of the aisle. And I'm like, okay, what's wrong, Amby? And she just kind of looked at me and looked back down at the, you know, with her head on her face, her muzzle on her paws. And so, well, that was weird. What that was about. I almost went outside just to see. When I caught we also have those, you know, the big farm lights, you know, light up the area. And I caught a silhouette or a shadow, you know, like the light behind. You know, like if you're standing in front of a light, cast a shadow, right? On we call it the blinds that's over the sink, or the window, like that's in front of the sink, or shade, that's the word I'm looking for. I went, I didn't know what that is. So I just laid down and I said, I know you're out there. Please don't hurt my animals. And voice said, you don't have to worry about that. I said, good. And I knew Mom in her bed, and I knew she was safe. So I just went to sleep. Funny thing is, next day, the neighbor with the kid that knocked my mother down while I was gone, and his wife, they were moving that day. They were out of there by noon. I don't know exactly what happened, but I suspect. But another thing, the one that showed up at the house here, it was gray and like white. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't, and it was probably more like 300 pounds. So it was lighter. It was both like because I seen it again. I didn't see it that night. I could tell it was not as big from the shadow it casts, but when I actually seen it, they're like around 300 pounds. They're not as big as the other ones, but obviously they're connected or something. I can't quite figure out, but evidently distance doesn't stop them from communicating. That's the only thing I can figure out. It does not come into the equation. So I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. So I pretended like I was getting something out of the storage shed, just so I could kind of eavesdrop, see what the heck was going on over there. And the guy's wife was frantic. She was freaking out. Wasn't going to stay here another night, and they were all three of them were pretty upset. And like I said, they moved out in a hurry. Only thing I can figure out is that Dogman did something. I don't think it's really that big of a deal for them to read our minds. That kind of bothers me in some ways because, you know, people's thoughts should be their own thoughts. It should be private. But when I look at it, situation, they actually did me a favor. Because this kid's a monster. You know, people call these guys monsters. I've met some human beings who are some real monsters. through my life. I'm sure there are monsters with these guys too. I mean, from what I've heard on your show, yeah, there's some real monsters already. It's a good reason to be carrying a heavy caliber rifle when you're running around the woods, if you're out in the bush, because if they're out there and there are ones like that, you better be able to protect yourself. Like 45-70, something like that, really big and heavy. So I got in about I can't remember exactly the time frame, but I was going through physical therapy for my neck because I'd gotten rear-ended by somebody doing 45 miles an hour, and when I was at a stoplight. So I was coming back and forth between this large city and this small town. And it's an area in Nevada. And this road, as soon as I turned off of it, or this highway, went on this very small highway, in my peripheral, I caught one on each side of me. They were racing me. Okay, keep in mind, these guys, I'm doing, when I hit that first, like, town that's way ahead, it's a turnoff to this old town. I was doing 95 miles an hour. My truck was doing 95. And they peeled off. That's where they stopped. They didn't race me past there. But keep in mind, these guys are on uneven ground with brush and stuff in the desert, running, and I'm on asphalt, and they're keeping up with me. It was like they were like really happy. I think they like to do that. They like, well, I mean, you look at dogs that like to chase cars and stuff. I don't know. I didn't feel a threat at all. There's no threat. It was just like, let's race. I remember you and I had talked to me prior to this actual interview, and you'd spoken about truckers having had the same experience of them racing beside their semis.
In the Nevada desert, that's right.
That's right, yeah. I'm guessing it's probably the same area, approximately same area. Yeah, by the time I get to therapy and stuff, and usually it was around 8, maybe 9 o'clock. By the time that was dark. It was dark. Unless there was a moon out that night, it's pretty dark. But it seems like every time I've seen these guys, it's on a full moon. Oh wait, there was one time I'm sitting here looking at the cameras, and it was a couple summers ago. Mom was sleeping. I had the door open, and I heard this screaming, guys yelling and girls screaming. There was some homeless people about maybe half a mile away. And they were it's funny how sound carries in the desert. It's so different from Alaska. Anyway, so I hear them screaming and guys yelling like I thought they were fighting or something. No, it's homeless. They're drunk. They're fighting. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at the cameras and I see this big black street come by. Oh, that's the only time I've ever seen a black one here. Ever. Other than that, they're always the smaller ones. And I know what that was. Caught it on my camera. I happened to be just looking right at the cameras, and because I was listening to what was going on, like probably, like I said, sound carries. I was trying to figure out, like, are they drunk and fighting? And I assumed that's what was going on until I saw that. And he had a big old grin on his face. I won't say the word, but you know what I'm saying. I think there's a lot more of them out there, I think, that people actually realize. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how I went most of my life in Alaska. I never saw one. That's what baffles me. Why did I see them down here, but not in Alaska? You just get this feeling like maybe you're being watched or something. And I've gotten that before when I've been out in the bush. That feeling like you are being watched, and you're being watched by something intelligent. Anybody who's spent time in the bush, they know exactly what I'm talking about. I've seen them on the property a couple of times. That's pretty much my experiences that everything I can recall.
Well, those are a lot of experiences. When the first Dogman you saw clearly at your dad's property walk past that stock trailer,
walk. He was moving like I've never seen anything move in my life. I've never seen an animal move that fast in my life. Actually, I don't think they're actually animals. I'm not sure what they are, but they're not a dumb animal. That's for sure.
No, they're not. Was it looking at you or looking elsewhere?
Looking at me. Looking right at me.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't help. Seeing something like a dogman walking bipedally is hard enough to come to grips with, of course. But when you experienced the mind speak, has that been the hardest part of your encounters to come to grips with? Because you say that they're not evil, does that not make it quite so difficult to wrap your mind around?
I can tell some things or someone's evil. They're not evil. At least these guys weren't. So what I've heard, like a couple of these people's experience that spoke on your podcast. Now that's evil. Like the one that ripped through that wall, that's evil. That's evil. And that needs to be put down. Whatever it is. These guys, I didn't get that impression from them at all. In fact, they have a sense of right and wrong and justice. Almost noble. I really, it's hard to put it into words.
Yeah, there's so many things about these guys that are so difficult to put into words. Mm-hmm. If you don't think that they're evil, does that mean that you think they're just flesh and blood creatures with the ability to mind speak, or do you think there's something else?
I think there may have been a time when we could do that. Okay, I don't know what happened in the past. Something changed drastically. I think there was a time when we were able to do things that we can't do today. I think we lived longer. I'm not saying I don't think there's evil ones out there, because I really do. I really do believe they're in that factor. They're no different than people. They can be good. They can be bad. I'm just fortunate to have not run into the bad ones.
Yeah, very fortunate. Now, you have had more than one encounter with a Sasquatch. Did they seem to be evil, or did all of those Sasquatch you encountered seem to be good?
I don't think they're necessarily good or evil. I think they're just are what they are. I mean, for one, they're not threatened by women. Okay, that around men, I think they act different. they view human men as a threat. And I think that was also had a lot to do with it. They didn't really view me and my friend as a threat. They're the way they talk. It really sounds like, like samurais. You know how if you ever seen like an old Japanese movie where the samurai are, how they're talking and that's what it sounds like. They understand what we're saying though. They understand what people are saying. I know that this one friend of mine, she's Yupik, and I'm not going to say her village or anything, but she goes, "Did they steal your fish?" I said, "Yeah, how'd you know?" She goes, "Because they come into our fish camps in the summer. I sailed to like maybe Iraq, I mean, they take what they need. They don't like wipe them out or anything like that. Take all their fish or something. They just take like one long rack of fish and that's it. I think the reason I don't think they know how to. I don't think they swim well. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but I don't think they. So I think the issue is them catching those like nice, bright, shiny, the good salmon. I'm not talking about the ones with the green head and they're red and they're full of worms and dying. You don't want them. Nice, bright, shiny, brighter the better. I think they have maybe a hard time getting them. I think that's why they do it. But yeah, it's common for that to happen. And it was funny the next day when Fish and Game came through and they told us, "Oh, there's some Asian people going up and down the river stealing people's fish." And my friend goes, "How big are these Asians?" Oh God, should see the look on those. They knew the jig was up. I said, "Well, you better catch them because I'm really upset. I was going to fry those up for breakfast this morning."
Yeah, like you said, they do that sort of thing all the time. They really do. When that family with the horrible boy who disrespected your mom moved out, did you ever try to reach out to the dogman the mind spoke with you to try to find out if the dogman actually did frighten them away?
Oh, I already know. I already know that's what happened. Did me a favor because my way of handling it was nobody touches my mother. Nobody. I was furious. Yeah, I thanked him.
How did he respond when you thanked him?
I just got this pleased. It was like a pleased. He was pleased. You can convey that into a feeling. That's what I got.
Huh, yeah, sounds like they did do that then. You never know. There are all sorts of crazy things that could happen that might have driven that family off. I hope it was the dogman that did it, and it sure sounds like it was, but yeah, that's why I asked that question.
Well, it was just the one. But it only takes one of those guys. It takes one of them. Especially if they're out to scare somebody. Because like I said, I was in Sarge shed eavesdropping on what was going on. And she's like, "I'm not staying here another night." I don't ever want to, she didn't want to see it, whatever she saw again. And I got it. I was like, okay, I know what happened here.
Yeah, I'll bet she did want to see what she saw ever again. I get it. Now, after you heard those homeless people screaming a few summers ago, did you ever try to track them down to find out what happened that night, or did you just let it be?
Nobody got hurt. So, this thing, they love to scare they find it so amusing that humans become afraid so easily. I think he was just having a good time, playing a joke on somebody. I mean, that honestly, that's how they look at it. Because nobody got hurt.
Seems like a lot of them, that's what they live for almost, is to terrify people to within an inch of their lives. So I can understand why you would say that. You said that you haven't had any dogman encounters in Alaska. Does that mean that you don't think they're in Alaska in any great numbers? Or do you think do you think that you haven't had an encounter because you just didn't happen to bump into one?
I think that I wasn't in their area, because I get the distinct impression that Harrymen and Dogmen don't really hang out with each other. I don't think they hang out in each other's areas. I think they have their own areas. I just haven't. But then, when I felt eyes on me, it could have been them. I don't know. Like I said, there's been times when I've been out in the bush and I know I'm being watched. Because I'm like hyper vigilant. I know I'm being watched. But I can't place it. I can't find out where it's coming from.
Yeah, like I tell people, trust your instincts. They normally will be pretty accurate. Well, we're about out of time here, Lynn, but before we go, do you have any closing comments you want to put out there for us?
If you can avoid shooting him, avoid it. But from what I heard from a few of your podcast situations, there's like no other option. But I understand that they have rogue elements, just like we do. There's good and there's bad everywhere. It's just life. It's the way things are. I do my best I've got to live in my own skin. So I can't do something that goes against what I feel, God, the Creator, Yahweh, whatever what you deem as being wrong. I can't do that. I can't go against that. And I wouldn't. Not to say I haven't made mistakes. Everybody's made mistakes. It's just life. We all make mistakes, but the idea is to learn from it and try to be a better person. Be a better person. One thing I forgot. That bull that my dad left out there, $5,000 bull just left out there, and I think he was feeding them. I think he left it out there for them. Because he had been dealing with those guys since about the mid-90s. I have an amazing memory. Because that clicked all the way, that conversation that we had when I was out in Dutch, all those years ago, clicked. And then everything kind of fell into place for me. Because through the years, I'd asked him, I said, Dad, do you lose many cows down here? And he said, once in a while, I lose a calf. Lost a couple of cows over the years. Other than that, no. So, I don't know what kind of deal or arrangement he had with these guys, but he was almost like kind of protecting him or something. I don't know. It's very. I wish I would have had that conversation with him, because I had a lot of questions I wanted to ask him.
It really does make you wonder what kind of an arrangement he must have had. But
I know he had some cattle rustled, like 20 head, in the. As a matter of fact, it was in the late 90s. Had some cows stolen. That never happened again.
Oh, I'll bet it didn't when you have a security guard out there like that. I don't doubt that at all. But having said that, thanks again so much for coming on, Lynn. I really appreciate your time and have a great night.